Hello, and thank you so much for joining me today. It is my pleasure to welcome you to my channel. Here at Abas'e the Scholar, I discuss some things which are a bit intellectual, some things which are not entirely intellectual, which are societal. I review books, and I take you around some of my experiences here in the United Kingdom during my LLM program. I will be discussing today the review of Peter James's latest book, The Hawk is Dead. I do not know how many of you have found this book, but I truly was blown away by it. In fact, Peter James's books are so addictive that it might be some good advice for you not to read it if you have something urgent to do. I spent about 2 weeks reading this book, but it made me a more disciplined person in the sense that I had to structure my time and ensure that it did not interfere with my LLM studies. I, of course, had the privilege of reading it during my commute. I understand that some people have different commutes and it might not be possible to read on those commutes, but it is something you can try. And I would like to say that this even goes back to my time in my country, Nigeria, where I read on the BRT, on the buses. I read in trains, on the Lagos Light Rail, on journeys by road commute and long distances across the country. But of course, it is not easy at first, but you could always try that. And now back to Peter James. The Hawk is Dead essentially is a story about the attempted murder of Queen Camilla. Yes, the royal family is captured in this book. The characters, Queen Camilla and King Charles III, are featured prominently here. They are the only two royals which are expressly featured here. The the Prince and Princess of Wales are not in this book. And of course, it's not as if His Majesty the King actually made these statements, but he is honorably mentioned here. What interests me is the storyline. I know a lot of people around the world tend to view the royals as these people who are almost deified. And so we're a bit scared to put them into more contemporary forms of art. We have gradually seen all of that change. For instance, when in 2012, James Bond was featured alongside the Queen, we have really seen uh, a side to the royals which is more fun, and they've always been very personable anyway. But seeing them here, you get to see the sort of humor you expect that His Majesty the King and Her Majesty Queen Camilla truly exude. And yes, they are very, very cheerful people, both in the book and in real life. Now, I am trying to skirt around just giving you enough to pique your interest in the book and enough not to give too much away and take away the fun from buying it and reading it yourself. I would just read the blurb. It's a very beautiful book, about 461 pages of anxious, exciting, thrilling drama involving the assassination of Her Majesty, attempted assassination of Her Majesty, her escape from the first attempt, subsequent attempts made on members of the royal household, including a murder in the palace. Yes, in Buckingham Palace itself. Well, it might not be surprising, being that there have been stories of how people have broken into Buckingham Palace, and of course, how shots have been fired. But this gives you some sort of palpable fear, you know, to think about the safety of the royal family and those who work there, of course. So here's the blob. Roy Grace never dreamed a murder investigation would take him deep into Buckingham Palace. Her Majesty Queen Camilla is aboard the royal train heading to a charity event in Sussex when disaster strikes. The train is derailed. A tragic accident or a planned attack? Minutes later, when a trusted aide is shot dead by a sniper, the police seem to have their answer. Yet, despite all the evidence, Royal Grace is not convinced the Queen was the intended target. Finding himself alone in his suspicions and fighting against the skepticism of his colleagues and the palace itself, Grace pursues his own investigation. But the stakes are raised even higher when a second murder occurs and Grace risks becoming embroiled in a very public catastrophe or even mortal danger. Failure at this level is not an option, but time is running out before the killer in the palace strikes again. Well, let me just give you this hint. The killer did strike again, but in a bit of leave and poetic license for Mr. Peter, let's see who that killer was. Let's see if it was any of their majesties, and let's see whether their majesties survived. This really brings out your patriotism, because you turn the pages hoping that their majesties are safe, hoping that our detective in this story, Roy Grace, gets to uncover whoever was plotting the assassination attempt quickly enough. I mean, you literally you literally keep God Save the King somewhere in your mind as you're reading this, and you're hoping that the the main actors here act and move fast enough to uncover whoever is behind this very dreadful attempt to end the life of the queen. Now, let me read for you some praise for this book, which I found very truthful, given my own experience with reading it. And here's from James Patterson. He says, "What a fool I've been not to have read Peter James Until the Hawk is Dead. A great story." I too found that, well, I might have been such a fool to not have read Peter James until now. He's very interesting. And there's another one from Alexandra Porter. It's fast paced and gripping. I couldn't put it down. And here is one more from Rachel Abbott. Classic Peter James, combining his trademark intricate plotting with a fascinating behind the scenes exploration of life within the royal household. One more. Roy Grace swaps Brighton for Buck House to unravel a conspiracy of murder, revenge, and betrayal. It all makes for a right royal page turner. And if you have never been more fascinated with the royal family, I believe that this book brings that out. And this comment is from Angela Rippon. We have one from Lee Child. Peter James is one of the best British crime writers and therefore one of the best in the world. How very true. We have one from Karen Slaughter. Peter James is one of the best crime writers in the business. I very much agree with them. I can't help myself but to read one more paragraph from him, which shows us why he decided on this storyline. Of course, if you have been a fan of Peter James, you would have noticed that his character, Roy Grace, is mostly in crime scenes in Brighton, Sussex. But this time, he's been relocated to London. And here is the explainer for that. And of course, this is just an explainer. It doesn't delve into the nitty gritty of the book and gives you enough of anticipation to go into it yourself. It says, the question every author is probably asked most often is, where do you get your ideas from? When I began my writing career, the answer I never thought I would be giving in a million years would have been, well, for this book, my ideas are from Her Majesty the Queen. Actually, but it's true. I'm fortunate enough to count Queen Camilla as my number one fan. In 2019, as the then Duchess of Cornwall, she wrote me a letter asking if my next Royal Grace novel might be centered in London. As history tells us, and this is why I found it very interesting and, and quite funny, things have not ended well for people who have displeased any former Queen of England. Just look back to Elizabeth I, who had 100 or so men hanged, drawn, and quartered, or to Bloody Mary, who turned some 300 souls into human bonfires. um, and of course, I won't go down there anymore because it gives you some spoilers into what the storyline is about. It's rather tempting, but let me keep it at that. So one could hardly imagine that with just about £20 or so, you could get some sort of relaxation and an exploration into the very intricate outlay of the royal residence, and of course the inner mechanics of the royal family and of course the royal household. It's a beautiful read. They have been adapted into movies as well, and I urge you, if you have time, read it. And if you do not have time, make out time to read Peter James's book, The Hawk is Dead. Thank you so much, everyone, and I'll see you in the next one.